This is Twit.
All right. We talked about this not too long ago. This kind of the impacts of Google's billing system changes and kind of how that's trickling down into apps. Essentially, Google has this new policy around billing saying that developers who are offering in-app digital purchases have to use Google's billing system, can't use their own billing system for those in-app purchases, those digital purchases. If it's a physical purchase, you can use your own billing system. If it's a digital in-app purchase, you have to use Google's billing. And kind of the latest casualty of this, whether that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know. But the latest casualty, it's making things more complicated is kind of my point. Amazon recently removed audiobook purchases from its Audible app. And I'm a big fan of Audible, sponsor on the network, of course. And so, I've been using Audible for years, but I'm always purchasing credits. And I don't know that when I purchase credits, I even do that through the app. So I haven't noticed any changes, but apparently that's the only way that you can buy audiobooks through the Audible app now. And then now Amazon is turning off Kindle digital book purchases on Android. So if you're using the Android app, you can still use it to buy physical goods. But if you come across an audiobook or a Kindle book or anything like that, you now get a why can't I buy on the app link that basically explains, Google Play Store has new policies. You're no longer going to be able to buy new content from the app. You can build a reading list on the app and then buy on the Amazon website from your browser. Same for Amazon Music purchases. So just something to kind of be aware of. Probably going to see more of this as time goes on because, Google has made this change that developers now have to kind of morph around. They have to do the calculus of the decision of, does it make sense for us to still sell and give Google this certain percentage of what we're making because we have to use their payment system, or just cut off purchases in the app altogether? And ultimately it's bad for the consumer, right? Because now if I want to buy a Kindle book on my Android device, I then have to open up a browser, or I imagine I could open up, like Chrome on my Android device and do desktop version and do it that way. I'm sure it would work, but it's more complicated. What do you guys think?
My unseemly was a very real reaction to this. It's so frustrating as a developer because I think so many times, external factors like this, I really, every time on a project where we've had to kick out to a web browser, I felt like as a failure on my part as a developer and as my part as of a product team, because it just, that kind of thing drives me absolutely insane. For as much as nominally we are a world built on smartphones and mobile devices, and I this maybe is just kind of really overly picky on me as a developer, that kind of context flow breaking and having to rely on the web, it drives me absolutely insane. Both as a user, because I'm really impatient now. I've learned that I can get things really quickly, and if I don't get them quickly, I get upset. But also as a developer, because that also just causes certain complications, or maybe it makes things easier depending, but it just drives me absolutely insane. So having to make this kind of decision drives me insane, but I can understand that we're kind of getting into this space now where we constantly are talking about different companies pushing back against this kind of monolithic, our way or the highway, on the business side of things. So it's very frustrating for me as a user and as someone who tries to create smooth, frictionless experiences for their users. It drives me absolutely freaking insane in all kinds of different ways. But I understand sort of the reason it's happening. Again, whenever we talk about someone like Amazon or another big company kind of complaining, I'm like, yeah, but also I still don't like you. But it is so frustrating. When you're reading it out, Jason, I was just thinking, oh God, I want to do this too. So that was a very real reaction on my part. My old man groaning was a very real reaction, and probably I'm gonna be making that same noise next time I go to my Kindle book, try to do a Kindle book purchase and forget that this is happening. So yes, unhappy.
What do you think, Duncan? What are your thoughts? Oh, you're muted.
This is an area I have a real hard time sort of deciding where I stand. I do agree that it feels rent-seeking behaviour on behalf of the big app stores to sit and just collect this 30%. But I also agree that they shouldn't be free. There is value that they add in the platforms and the stores themselves. There is security to be found by having something curated, monitored, and scanned. So that has costs and that has value that I don't have issues with them seeking out. The most egregious of this, I actually think, is Microsoft, who scream from the top of their lungs about App Store being not fair and that want to collect 30% of the game revenue and want games platforms stores excluded. Now, I understand they sell their hardware at a loss leader, but you could argue that Google gives away everything they do almost as a loss leader. So I'd like to see a bit more there. So I really don't know whose side to come down on. This specific news infuriates me because it's going to make it just that little bit more difficult. And if I can't buy my 3-credit pack top up for Audible when I'm wanting to crunch through a series, that will just be that other barrier. At least in Android, it should throw you out to the browser without there being an issue, so I can authenticate through the browser. And so it's going to be an annoyance rather than using Google Play billing. But I do get why Amazon's doing it, although I agree with Win. I don't like them either. Don't like any of the big platforms. So it's something that needs to be sorted. We need to get past this, and all these capitalistic companies need to come to a détente so the users aren't the ones left in the middle.
That's a really good point, though, on the kind of like 30%, kind of as a person just listening to that sounds egregious, but you're right. There is value there, and there is services being provided as part of that 30%. It's not for nothing. It's not strictly speaking capitalist greed, although there is a certain healthy amount of that, to be sure, probably. But I think it's a really good point too. And maybe also, again, kind of looking at the other side of platforms like iOS, like kind of a curated, streamlined, super seamless experience is what part of like what you pay for with the hardware, with the software, with everything else. So I think that's a really good point to make as well, that it's not like everything can't be for free, obviously. I know we've talked about that quite a bit. Right. So I think it's a very fair point to make.